I might have done all this work for nothing.
It's Mike's first flip.
Dang. So in today's goal, the mission is to get my new cabinets to match the old ones in my renovation. And I just got done cleaning them all up. They were super dirty, especially the tops of the upper cabinets. But after they were clean, I was very happy with how these cabinets look. The veneer and finish on pretty much all these cabinets are in great shape. Some of the boxes just need a tiny bit of repairs. Unfortunately, the cabinet boxes were assembled with plastic corner brackets. I just pulled those out, put in some metal ones, and screwed them in place. This is way stronger and totally fixes the problem. I believe that the existing finish is an oil-based, semi-gloss, or satin finish. I want the color and tone to match as good as possible. That way the slight difference in the doors will be hopefully unnoticeable. Home Depot has a pretty good selection and variation of sizes that I was able to pick up. These days from Home Depot, you can only get flat panel doors rather than the raised panel like this. I believe that if we do a good job, this difference will be unnoticeable to most people.
Boy, was I wrong.
And a non-factor to future renters or buyers. I still want to get the finish right though, and I've got a plan to test it out before we apply finish to all of the new cabinets.
After taking off one of the small new doors, I applied satin water-based polyurethane to one side and satin oil-based to the other. I gave it a little time to dry and then checked out how it looked.
All right, our test was super successful. It's almost obvious that this is the same finish. It's clear that the water-based finish is just too light and the tone of the oil-based matches really well. Also, the sheen is pretty much the same, so I'm going satin on all of our cabinets.
These cabinets come pre-assembled, but I want to take them apart before I spray them with finish. That way I don't get any polyurethane on the hardware or the drawer slides. The insides of the cabinet boxes are also finished. I just want to spray the face frames, the doors, and drawer faces. This big cabinet is going to be a pantry. It'll go right next to the new refrigerator. The fridge is going to be on the left side, so whenever I reinstall these doors, I'm going to make sure it swings open to the right. That way you can have easy access to both.
And these shelves are pre-finished, so I'm just going to set these inside. Same with the drawer.
I used some Goo Gone to get rid of some leftover packing tape or a sticker that was on a couple of doors. I scrubbed at it for a little bit, but once it had time to soak, I came back with a sharp chisel and scraped the rest of it away. Once my doors were cleaned up, I wanted to sand them down just a little bit to make sure I got a uniform finish. I'm using 220 grit on the random orbit, and I also sanded by hand to get into any corners or contours. And FYI, I'll make sure and leave links to tools, materials, and supplies in the description.
And before I spray the wood, I'm gonna wipe it down with a new tack cloth. This is just a really clingy, sticky rag that gets every bit of surface dust. To spray these cabinets, I'm gonna be using this Wagner all-in-one HPLV sprayer. The model is a Control Spray Max. I bought it myself for a good price, and what's great about this system is that I don't need an air compressor like a traditional HPLV. I don't have an air compressor here, so this should be awesome.
This sprayer comes with a fine nozzle, which is great for painting and finishing cabinets, and we don't technically need to thin the polyurethane.
Oh, and really quick, this is Future Mike with the PSA. I didn't do it on my base coats, but you should thin down oil-based poly before you spray it. It's not required, but you will get a flatter finish. Different people recommend different things, but you can start by trying 1 parts mineral spirits and 4 parts finish.
I did not do that though. I applied my base coats without thinning at all. I still got a really good finish, it just didn't self-level as well as it could have. For this finish, I turned down my air pressure and the material feed.
So we'll do a quick test on this cardboard. I'll make sure my spray is good, then we'll move to the door. I think we can get a little more. There we go. That looks pretty nice. I think that's pretty close to what we're looking for. I'm gonna turn it up a bit and see what that does. Okay, so that gave me a little more fan and I could move quicker, but I noticed overspray. So I'm turning it down. Maybe somewhere in the middle, about right there. Yeah, I think that's close to what we want. All right, let's give that a shot. And I already did a second wipe with the tack cloth on all the wood.
One of the biggest tips that I have is to keep your sprayer relatively perpendicular and straight in relation to what you're spraying.
That looks awesome.
If you pivot your wrist, the finish will start to spray out, it'll create a lot of overspray, and it'll prevent you from creating a consistent build. Now what we want is a really consistent, even finish. If we get too thick of a buildup, that's what creates runs, drips, and rippling. So just make sure that you go with the grain of your wood and find a speed that works for you. If you find that you're having to move too quick, just turn your material flow down a little bit.
This was the back that we did the water-based and the oil-based on. Hopefully this oil can penetrate and make a consistent color.
I spent a little extra time sanding this door. If the water-based poly was still too thick, then the oil-based wouldn't be able to get past it and into the wood, and it wouldn't have created the color change, and that would not be uniform and good looking. This big door is the last one I need to do, and I started to get the hang of using this sprayer by the time I got to this point. If you spray finish often, let me know which sprayer you recommend.
All right, quick update. This is going really well. The doors look awesome. I'll do 2 coats on the back and the front, and now let's work on these cabinets.
I didn't use much polyurethane to get a coat of finish on these boxes. The face frames are just made out of 1x2 beech.
I'm gonna need to tape that down.
First, I sprayed all of the faces of the face frames on the boxes. Then, I did my best to position the sprayer as perpendicular to the edges of the face frame as I could, and I got that covered also.
All right, down to the last one, the big pantry cabinet.
If you're not already, make sure and click subscribe and the notification bell. That way you can see each of my uploads on this income property renovation series.
That was fast. I think the whole coat maybe took 15 minutes. It's been 2 hours and these look really good. Like I mentioned, there's a tiny bit of dust and some imperfections trapped in the finish, so we're gonna give it a quick sand with 220.
With this quick sanding, I just want to get any high points or dust fibers that I can get rid of. I don't want to sand through the finish down to bare wood at all. Then I'll wipe everything down again with a tack cloth. On coat number 2, I basically did the same steps as coat 1, but I didn't quite apply as heavy of a coat. Now that I have full coverage, I just want to make sure that I get a consistent film over the top of the whole door or drawer face. That way it's a complete finish coat.
Straight up, I'm a little surprised at how well this sprayer is working. I'm not getting any runs, I'm not getting any kind of bubbles. It's laying really flat. This is my first time using an HPLV sprayer though, so if you have good advice for anything you see that I'm doing wrong, leave a comment down below. Let's get this big pantry sprayed.
If you have any vertical surfaces like all of these boxes, be a little more careful because it's easier to get a run if gravity's working against you. And make sure that whatever direction your spray pattern's going, your gun is moving the opposite.
I taped the plastic down and that should help.
On this box, I had my spray pattern going up and down, and you just saw me move my gun up and down with it. This is the quickest way to get runs.
Today was a big success. It's about 6:30 now, so I'll probably end up flipping all my cabinet doors and spraying them with 2 coats tomorrow. I'm sure the more that I use this or any HPLV, the better I'll get. I'll empty out the rest of the polyurethane in the sprayer back into the jar, and then I'll run a little bit of mineral spirits through the whole system. That way it doesn't clog overnight.
But before we move on, I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsor,
Squarespace. If you want to build your own website, online store, or just get a custom domain, Squarespace is your one-stop shop, and you need 0 website building experience. And with Fluid Engine, Squarespace's next-generation website building platform, it's never been easier to unlock your unbreakable creativity. Just start with one of Squarespace's best-in-class templates and customize every aspect from there with enhanced drag-and-drop technology on desktop and mobile. And if you start a Squarespace online store, there are no limits to the number of products that you can sell, whether that's a physical good, digital good, or a service product. And if you take payments in person, Squarespace has got you covered. By connecting the Square card reader to the Squarespace app, you can make sure all your sales, orders, and inventory are up to date in person and online. So to learn more, follow my link down in the description, squarespace.com/modernbuilds, where you can build out your entire Squarespace site before entering any of your credit card info. And then when it's time to make your website live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. Thanks again to Squarespace. Now let's keep working on these cabinets. So I've got our gallon of finish, and I am very happy with the finish results. The backs of the door are basically flawless. They look really great. And the one spot that I was worried about, the corner of that cabinet right there, ended up not being that big of a deal. I applied the finish a little too heavy by not having my spray pattern oriented horizontally. While it was wet, I thought I was gonna get runs, but now that it's dry, I can see that it's just a little bit of rippling that I can sand and do a finish coat over, no problem.
Whenever you're sanding polyurethane, it's really easy to see the high points and the low points because of the way that it gets opaque. I just kept sanding until I could see that I had a good, flat substrate. Then I flipped over all of my drawer faces and doors. Oh, and while I was at it, I went ahead and rotated my upper cabinet boxes. That way I made sure to get all of the faces and edges of my frame. Once again to everybody, I didn't thin this down, but I would do 1 parts mineral spirits to 4 parts finish on this base coat. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I started getting really excited when I saw how decent this wood looked with this finish on it. The veneer on the backs of the panel did not look as good as the veneers on the fronts of the panel, so seeing that consistent finish on the door really made me excited, and I wanted to get these things done to see how they looked in the kitchen. From this point of view, you can really see how I'm spraying past each door, and I'm starting the spray before I'm actually over the door. That way I don't get any blobs from starting or spraying over the door or cabinet itself. This is the first time this happened. I got a couple of tiny bubbles if you can see them, but we'll sand these down just like any other high spot. When I noticed those bubbles, I did a little bit of research and people said that the best solution was to thin down my finish a little bit. So I finally did that on my final coat. I'm sure a lot of y'all are saying, finally. I've seen some people say online that they like to thin their first coats, and other people that say that they don't like to. Explain to me why I should or shouldn't down in the comments. And I'm eyeballing this so that in total we've got about 1/4 mineral spirits, 3/4 poly. Now right away, I noticed that the self-leveling properties of this finish were enhanced big time by just thinning it out 1 parts mineral spirits to 3 to 4 parts polyurethane. Already, I can tell the difference between spraying thinned finish versus unthinned, and I'm starting to think I should have thinned every coat because this is really easy to lay down. All in all, this entire experience has been really encouraging. I've done countless DIY furniture projects, but I've always applied the finish by hand. So I'm very excited about the potential of, in the future, building some cabinets and furniture and spraying the finish instead of just applying poly by hand. Okay. Day 2 of spraying went really well. We'll come back tomorrow and I'll probably get some help installing the cabinets back on the wall. We're back and the cabinets look amazing. This is super pro. The grain really popped and got this rich color to it. I'm really excited. I reinstalled my hinges in the same holes that they were installed before, and then I screwed those back onto the face frame. I didn't exactly keep track of which hinge went where, so after they were all screwed in place, I went through adjusting them to make sure all of my lines were square and looking good. There we go. I got a little bubble right here I'll have to fix, but no big deal. The drawer fronts were held on with just a couple of screws, and if you need to adjust these, it's easy. Just set it in place, and then wiggle it where you need it to be so it's square, and then tighten those screws down. And now it's time to install these cabinets. The plan is to move this cabinet to the outside since it has a veneer. I'm also hoping that putting the new cabinet in the middle will help everything blend. Step 1 in this process is removing the old toe kick and then unscrewing these 2 cabinets. Then step 2 was cutting out the 1/2-inch plywood that's underneath where the new cabinet is gonna go, because I don't need that riser. I unfortunately stripped a couple of screws in the process, so after I pried away the plywood, I came back with my angle grinder to cut them away. Overall, this cabinet is just a little bit shorter than the old ones, but I want to make sure that the bottom of the face frames line up. I cut a little strip on the table saw to make sure that it was at the right height, and then I screwed the face frames together using an 1/8-inch drill bit to make a pilot hole first. The flooring was a little wonky underneath where the peninsula is extending, so I used some plywood to raise it. That way all of our cabinet box face frames are flush on the bottom. And this extra storage and countertop space is going to be awesome in the new kitchen. I want the tops of these upper cabinets to be 84.5 inches high, and the cabinets themselves are 30 inches tall.
So I'm gonna mark and install a cleat at 54.5 inches that they'll rest on while we screw them into the stud.
I want to give a big shout out to my dad for coming through after work to give me a hand hanging these cabinets on the wall.
One down.
I needed to rip down the piece of trim on the side of this cabinet to make sure that it fit between the wall. The whole assembly is getting shifted over about 2 inches, and that's what I'm accommodating for. I'm going to be installing a microwave range hood combo underneath this new 30-inch wide cabinet. That's why I got it.
I can say with confidence that new small cabinet does blend better than the base cabinet did earlier, which is cool, so let's keep moving.
And now with the extra space, we could install this 12-inch cabinet next to the microwave to close it in.
That's gonna look good.
This install is way straighter than what the cabinets were before. I remember the top line being pretty crooked. The reason that we're using plywood as a cleat is that it's got a really straight factory edge.
There we go. Nice. Careful.
Bring it on!
These cabinet boxes were going basically in the exact same locations, so we didn't have to mark for studs or anything. We just had to find the old screw holes and go right back in. These were also the boxes that we did the most repairs to, so it took a little bit of finagling to get everything to line up flush and square.
The cabinets had a little bit of warp to them since they're not new, but we're gonna be able to get all of that out by screwing our face frame flush. Gap closed! Woo!
With another win under our belt, we decided to bring in the pantry cabinet and call it a day.
All right, Dad, thank you again for the help. I appreciate it big time. I got one more day of filming. I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll get these cabinets complete.
Before I took care of anything else, I unscrewed the plywood cleat from the wall, and I reinstalled all of my drawers. And that is honestly where everything went wrong. You'll see.
This sucks to say, but I might have done all this work for nothing. Or at least all the work finishing the doors. If everything matched as well as the upper cabinets do, I would be golden. But I hate the drawer face on this cabinet, and I don't like being negative. The finish on almost all this wood matches really great, except right down there. I know now it's not an exact species match on the wood. I think the old cabinets were hickory. That's my current guess. If you know, leave it down in the comments. But I'm gonna do some research and see what this might cost me.
The more I sat there looking at them, the more the drawer faces stuck out like a sore thumb.
The face frames match pretty good, so I'll be able to keep the cases, but I'm gonna replace the doors and drawers. Dang, this is a bummer, but it is what it is. Pressing on.
So all in all, our kitchen is looking way better and I learned a ton. I'll see you very soon for part 2 of this kitchen renovation.